One moment. Hopefully I'm on here. Just give me a second, check some things out. Sorry, we have a little bit of a change here. Google changes stuff every week, it seems. Anyway, Doug hopefully will be joining here soon. I have last week I did it as a live stream rather than a Hangout. So I'm just checking to make sure right now. Let's see here if this is playing. I might get some feedback. Last week I did it as a all right. Okay, guys, bear with me. Hopefully, I'm checking with Doug. Hopefully, he's going to be getting this invite to the Hangout here. Apologize. I much prefer the other way they had it, where we could see actual comments and feedback. I'm going to make a note here. Hopefully, I believe it on the live on vericoin.info/live. There is an embed feed of this. And hopefully Doug joins here soon. Let me see. I get Doug in here, hopefully. And one moment, let me go into the VeriCoin Slack and see if anyone can watch this. Guys, I know it's tricky because I don't see any notes. So in Slack, if someone can make a comment of whether or not you hear me or not, Doug should be joining here soon. I just gave him a direct link. Here you are. I see Doug.
Can you hear me?
I definitely can. Good to hear your voice and see you. I was getting a little worried there for a second. I don't know. Last week we were able to see comments from the community as I was doing the live stream. This time I don't see if there's any way for anyone to make comments, and I don't see anything coming in yet, but we do have some viewers. So we're a little bit behind schedule here, so I'll go ahead and just I'll let Doug. I think what we want to try to do first is people that are new to the project, give a quick overview of what the VeriConomy is. Doug co-founded it along with, he co-founded both VeriCoin and Barium with Patrick Nosker back in 2014. So Doug, why don't you, for the people that are new, just give a quick overview of what the project is and why we have two different things consisting of VeriConomy.
Sure. Okay, so I mean, I like to tie it into recent events as well as you go back into you know, what we've been working on, and basically from Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash is a good example of where the market essentially is demanding two different things out of cryptocurrency. Bitcoin Cash is not as big as Bitcoin is for a number of reasons, but it's a good example where Bitcoin Cash is in demand to some extent to be a currency that can scale to the masses, where people can make payments, you know, for regular purchases as needed on a day-to-day basis. And then Bitcoin is migrating into, at least on the blockchain itself, is migrating into a store of value currency. And the reason is because this is a tough compromise to make. How do you have a highly secure, stable store of value? It can never be a store of value if it's not highly secure and reliable. And at the same time have a scalable, fast, and secure, sufficiently secure payment system that is fully reliable for payments. And so in 2016, prior to the split between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, we kind of saw the writing on the wall in that there's a market force in demand for two competing things: store of value and currency. And we decided that VeriCoin, which we started in 2014 as a proof of stake currency, as a way to be more efficient, have less costs, and thus also be a currency that doesn't require transaction fees, doesn't have a cost profile really. So everything can be extremely cheap to use as a day-to-day currency, and can be faster in this context. This was the original intent of VeriCoin, and this is what it is still to this day, amid a number of improvements over the years. But we also realized that there is a need for a secure store of value. And in 2016, we designed and built the Verium protocol. And this is basically our store of value blockchain, our store of value currency, if you will. And the cool thing is when you don't require that the currency and the store of value be the same thing, you have a lot more flexibility in how it can be implemented. So for instance, we can have on Verium, we can have more security with a longer block time. It can be harder to acquire. It can be more scarce and represent attributes that are beneficial as a store of value. While in VeriCoin, we can have it be faster, have it be cheaper to use, essentially free, and very suitable for a currency. And then ultimately what you want to do is have both of those elements together in an economy. And this we're now calling VeriConomy in a sense, because we can combine VeriCoin and Verium into a joined system that in which a small, initially small startup economy can be built on, and you can have trading between your store of value, your sort of digital gold, and your digital currency, and we have a supply peg in the protocols between them. So this would be a supply and demand peg, as opposed to a value peg like we see with these stable coins. A value peg is a nice attribute, but in a free market, it's extremely difficult to maintain without having complete control of both things that are pegged to one another. And that's completely antithetical to decentralization and running things without a central entity, just having voluntary participation in a consensus. So basically, we envision the VeriConomy being a most suitable system under which one can digitally transfer and use a store of value and a currency, where the benefits of each are mutually accessible. So and ultimately the kind of final link to bridge these two together, we call the binary chain, which is essentially we let the miners have the ability to use some of their hashes that they're already producing. So when a miner is mining, they're basically calculating random numbers. And if they get the right random number, they can get a block. But they spend, say in Verium, 4 minutes generating thousands of hashes. All those hashes are effectively wasted. We can take some of those hashes and use them to process blocks on the VeriCoin chain. And then this will enhance the security of the currency, from a more secure framework of the store of value currency, and basically we can now get mutually a beneficial binary, meaning two-part system that kind of gives us the best of both worlds, and we're not just trying to shoehorn Bitcoin into a currency or into a store of value one way or the other. We're designing these two pieces to be separate with a shared ability to enhance decentralization, enhance security, enhance transaction throughput, and reduce cost by utilizing the two.
Yeah. So I think binary chain on its own is obviously one of the key factors that people that are familiar with this project understand the value of it. At the same time, I think it gets lost that each Vericoin and Verium have pretty unique characteristics in the marketplace already. So I wanted to ask you, someone in the community had asked, you have a white paper for Post, but then we have Post 2.0. So if you can maybe quickly just elaborate on, there's obviously other proof of stake currencies out there. Just maybe touch on the advantage of Post and also the refinements from the initial white paper of Post to 2.0 and those enhancements and what 2.0 basically entails.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to try and keep it concise. I more so live in the technical details, but basically, Post is a proof of stake time. It's basically proof of stake, which is like mining, except the competition for participating in transaction processing by anyone is not due to the amount of computational power you have. It's due to the number of coins that you have. And there's advantages to that in that you're not burning a lot of electricity. You just have to have ownership of some currency. There's disadvantages in that you have to actually buy the currency to participate in the consensus. You can't just run a miner. But with the advantages that there is no electricity consumption, you can have a cheaper, meaning less costly transaction system. So we launched with a pure coin based proof of stake protocol, and we then upgraded to our own designed and implemented protocol called proof of stake time. And basically this enhances the security by using the amount of time that you hold the currency as a factor to enhance the unpredictability of the system. So if you can predict when a block is going to come and who it's going to come to, you can manipulate the system. So if we have a varying time element, essentially an additional dimension in the consensus, then the behavior of the individuals that are using the currency is a factor more so in the consensus process. It becomes more organic and it becomes more secure in that way. So we're using the time that you're holding the currency as an incentive mechanism to enhance participation and decentralization in the consensus. So we upgraded proof of stake to achieve these goals and have. One of the things that is hard to model in a test network and can really only be modeled in a real network is how effective you are at achieving these combination of technological advances, and then there's this behavioral element to it. There's the network effect, there's latency, there's all these things that play into an organic peer-to-peer network that cannot be simulated effectively, can only be analyzed after the fact. One of the things that will be in a future paper is how effective proof of stake time is at enhancing decentralization and security without any additional costs in the consensus. And then proof of stake time 2.0 is essentially just taking proof of stake. The theory is not changing. The model's not changing. It's really just an optimization of the existing system, a simplification of it. The computer will have to do less calculation to achieve the same ends, and some tighter parameters on everything, so that it just works better, flows better, uses even less CPU, and so forth. And then this will all be described in a future paper as well. These details, but the original paper on proof of stake time is conceptually the same as proof of stake time 2.0. Just it's an improved implementation. Now, actually, 1.7.1, the VeriCoin wallet 1.7.1. This was actually already a major improvement. This was about 80–90% of the way to post 2.0. All the changes that could be made to post, the improvements that could be made to post, including a difficulty bug that we had, were made that didn't require any network change at a future block where the whole network would have to be upgraded. So you could say this is a completely continuous upgrade. All the upgrades that could be done were done in 1.7.1, and then a little bit of stuff in 1.7.2. So we're really almost at post 2.0 already, but when we release the post 2.0 wallet, it will effectively be the final implementation, aside from any new designs that we determine are better, or security updates and so forth. But it'll be kind of the final version of proof of stake time, and it will be a required update where you have to update at a certain block. Some parameters will change in the consensus. It's basically the exact way that the calculations are done is going to change, which results in a slightly different number, which means that everyone has to have the same code. So that will be a scheduled upgrade in the future. So that's an overview of those two.
Okay, and so with Varium being a proof of work, and that's unique as well, in the fact that I know one of the main goals when you and Patrick created it was to also address the issue of or trying to make things as decentralized as possible. So with Varium being both ASIC and GPU resistant, that's an innovative and unique aspect that I think is worth noting about. And then we can extend that even further with, I think, one of the topics you want to talk about tonight, which is, how can we make it? It's one thing for it to be ASIC and GPU resistant, but it's another to get as many people mining as possible. So why don't you go ahead and explain maybe just high overview of proof of work time versus just standard proof of work, but then get into the decentralization aspects and the things that you're working on now with regards to the innovations to get more of the normal, like my mom could mine Varium if she wants.
Yeah. So okay, so like I said earlier, mining is basically a computational horse race for getting a lucky number at every block. And if you get that lucky number and you propagate your lucky number onto the network first, then you are the one who processes transactions for that block. And for that work, for that security execution of the consensus system, you get paid in coins. This is proof of work. A couple problems with proof of work, which again we've seen in Bitcoin, and there's two fundamental problems with proof of work as it stands right now. One is, if you have an algorithm, which is essentially hashing, it's referred to as, but basically it's the exact way that the computer determines the correct lucky number. If this algorithm is suitable to run on specialized hardware, where like Bitcoin, in which you can build a customized computer specifically just to do this one task, and you can gain hundreds to 1,000 times advantage over someone who has a generic CPU. Then what ultimately happens is you lose decentralization. You can analyze the network, statistically over time of Bitcoin on how distributed the consensus is across addresses, but you can also just look at what's happening in Bitcoin, which is you have all these controversies with some of the big ASIC manufacturers and how much they have the ability to manipulate the mining competition in their favor by putting special devices and hardware that they only release to themselves or they only sell to their friends, or in some cases governments maybe help them have better bandwidth to their network as opposed to, and then on the way out, the blocks that propagate on the way out can be constricted by the government. And so basically the more a single corporation or government can manipulate the consensus system, the more we end up devolving back into a more traditional financial institution where one person effectively can censor transactions, can block you from doing any kind of business, prevent you from participating in the market, ultimately prevent you in some cases from getting food to your family, etc. So we want as little centralization as possible. Being able to mine with very specialized hardware centralizes the competition to the small number of groups that have the capacity and funding to make these special hardware devices. Most POW coins these days use GPUs. GPUs are better than ASICs because they're they can be used for mining. They're basically a big, it's a graphics processor, but it has a lot of small processors in it, so you can generate a lot of hashes at one time with all those small processors. And that's better than an ASIC because GPUs are sold for the gaming industry. They're sold for other things. They're more widely distributed. They're more available, although in 2017, GPUs basically were not available because of the cryptocurrency bull market, and it was hard to get access to GPUs. And there is only about 2 companies that make reliable GPUs for mining. So you still have kind of the same phenomenon. And then there's CPU mining, which is what Verium is. And basically, this was our first goal. We want the average person to be able to go on their computer, click mine, and get coins. Because if you can do that, then you can financially empower yourself and no one can stop you. And then that's obviously a great benefit to people. And it basically can bring control of a market, of a government, of an economy out of the hands of the people who are buddy-buddy with all the people in power, and just equal the playing field as much as physically possible. This is the true goal. And if you can just buy any CPU, it's the most widely developed hardware device that can calculate these lucky numbers. It has the most number of companies. There's different kinds of CPUs for different types of devices. If you can use this to mine, then you will not have this centralization problem of the hardware. Basically, you can do no better than a CPU. So
well, I think it's worth noting too, to that point, that a lot of and you would know better than me, but I know a lot of the miners of Verium are using like single board computers. So you're talking like an Odroid or an HDMI stick or whatever. So
yeah, it turns out
$60 device, and you basically have some measure of being able to mine. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think the Verium mining channel on Slack would know better than me, the people on there, but I'm pretty sure that the most efficient device right now, aside from maybe Birdie's cooling innovations with single board computers, is an HD TV stick, basically, like a literal, like a computer that you hook up to your TV for smart TV devices. And the reason is because it turns out that we designed the mining algorithm for Verium, which is, it's the same type of algorithm that Litecoin uses. So it's been tested in the wild as a secure and reliable mining algorithm, but we changed the parameters such that it requires too much memory to run on a GPU. So you can mine on a GPU with Verium, but you basically have to disable most of the processors because each processor has access to only so much memory. So to use the memory on the GPU that are available for its processors and mine the hashes, you have to disable a lot of the CPUs. So essentially it's a crippled GPU, and you basically just burn more electricity than it's worth. It's more efficient to mine with the CPU. And then ASICs are certainly possible to design, but they would be extremely expensive to build because they would require so much fast memory. So you're better off just buying the mass-produced CPUs that have fast memory sufficiently available. And maybe you can buy a lot of them. You can buy servers. You can. A lot of people put these single board computers together into like a little farm, but each one is under $100. This is highly accessible stuff. Now, what's in single board computers is the same thing that's in a smartphone, and this is one of the goals as well, is bring mining to the smartphone. Now, the other major problem that we never solved with Verium and has not been solved in any proof of work currency. It's been a problem from the very, very beginning, and this is pool mining. Now, pool mining is not a bad thing, but it can and does increase the centralization of the consensus. And basically, long story short is, yes, on Verium you can pick up a computer and you can mine by clicking a button, any computer. But the problem is that depending on how much power you have, how much power your computer has relative to the rest of the network, the time it takes for you to actually get a block could be quite long. And so it turns out, I didn't think at the time this would be as much of an issue as it is, but there's this real, and I fully understand it, I experience it myself, there's a real psychological need to have your rewards coming in consistently and often so that you can calculate basically your profitability while mining, because you are consuming some electric, and you can basically figure out whether it's worth your time. And if you just try it and you're not sure if it's real and you click mine and nothing happens for 15 days and you quit, you think it's a scam or you think it's just
right.
whatever, you don't think it's real, then you lose an opportunity. So what people do to deal with this phenomenon, which is just part of the reality of mining, is pool their mining together so that if I mine with you and you mine with me and we all mine on the same server, basically, then the number of blocks that are coming in are more frequent, and we can split those blocks proportionally on the server, and the server can send out the coins to everybody, and then I can get rewards every day, even though I have a small device that's not competitive enough to get a block every day. The problem with this is that you then are dependent on a third party again. So we again bring in this third party element where what ends up happening on Bitcoin, on Verium, on Litecoin, on every proof of work currency is you have no more usually than 5 pools that dominate the consensus. And that's a problem because I could potentially, or anyone could potentially, extort 5 people and overtake the system. That's the reality. If 5 servers have access to a hash rate that can be greater than 51% of the consensus, basically control of the consensus system. Like in voting, if you have the majority, you basically have control. If you can extort 5 people and gain control of the consensus, then all this technology for decentralization is ultimately lost in the blink of an eye. So this is a major problem. It has not been solved. I honestly didn't think we were going to be able to solve it ever, anyone potentially. But I think we actually have a true solution for this now. And so this is what I've been working on recently. And basically, I'll go into the details of this, but basically, long story short is, what we need is a system where, like I said, you can go to a computer, you can click mine, and you get a reward within at least a day, let's say. The psychological need for just trying something and feeling like it's worth it, or calculating your profits over time, and practical concerns. This is a requirement so that there isn't a great incentive to go onto a pool. Now, people don't have to go onto a pool, but they're incentivized to go onto a pool to have assurances that they're getting their coins. If we can remove the incentive to go onto a pool, then and you can click mine on the solo mine directly to the Verium network and get a reward frequently. The extra incentive, the unnatural extra incentive to go onto a pool is gone. Now, some people may prefer a pool, or they may opt for a pool, and that's totally fine. But we don't want every small miner to have to be on a pool to have it be viable. That's the concern. So maybe Kevin, before I expound on technical details, maybe you want to comment more, or do you want me just to go into it?
No, I think I'm interested to hear, because to me this is a game-changing solution if we're able to pull this off.
Yeah.
For me, from day one, I'm not a tech head. I believe in the technology, but I'm not a developer. As someone that's kind of more about developing use cases, and maybe from the marketing end, I want to talk to people. I want to talk to family members at Thanksgiving or Christmas, and they say, okay, cool, I want to do this. I want it to be easy for them. So my push all along has been, what can we do to make things easy? And so I'm just interested to hear what the plan you have to implement this, so we can get my mom mining by whenever, as soon as possible.
Yeah. That's what I want too. I want my dad and mom to be able to actually participate and not be like, hey, Doug, can you like do this or that crypto thing for me?
Well, and beyond our own, I mean, the fact, like you said, if we can get it where economically and psychologically, probably more than economically, anybody in the world, regardless of whether they have a CPU, extra laptop laying around, their phone, an HDMI stick, whatever, we really, that's the ultimate in decentralization.
Exactly.
So it's not just, so we're removing the hardware requirement. I think more importantly, we're removing the technology savvy aspect as well, so that it's simple for anybody. And that to me is the biggest aspect.
Yeah. So basically, the more decentralized your consensus is, so if you go from 5 entities having the majority control of the consensus to 20, the network is exponentially more secure, because the cost of say co-opting these groups, servers, pools, what have you, goes up exponentially. So basically, yes, exactly. If we can have decentralization by means of numbers on the network, then it's a totally different ballgame. And I'll go into some numbers that are really, really remarkable. Okay, so so what we're going to do, how I'm implementing this, and the exact final implementation I don't have yet. I'm going through the code, and I'm writing the functions, and I'm building it out, and I'm figuring out the exact implementation as I go, obviously, because this is something that hasn't been done before. But I've mostly have it figured out, so now it's just a matter of getting the final details coded up. And basically, long story short, is what we need is we don't need to change the way a block is produced at all. That's the good news. To do this, we do not change the way a block is produced. We do not change the probability of anyone getting the ability to process transactions. So we can continue to use the well-tested, well-advanced Bitcoin POW style of you cannot predict the lucky number. It's like a lottery. There's so many possibilities. You can't know what the number is in any way. You merely just have to try as many possible numbers as you can. And what this does is level the playing field to a hard physical metric like electricity consumption, etc. And so this has no bias towards nation, race, economics. It has an economic component to it, but it doesn't bias anyone in terms of strictly economics. And it basically is as level playing field as any financial system has ever been. Okay, this is the Bitcoin proof of work system. We are not changing that at all. What we're doing is we're changing the way the reward is distributed. And to do that, we need to know we need to prove how the reward should be distributed. And to do that, we can use, cool thing is we can use some of those hashes that everyone's throwing away. So when a miner is mining, they're generating thousands of hashes per minute in the case of Verium. And if they get a block, one of those tens of thousands of hashes is the right one, and the others are lost. It's basically just essentially wasted electricity consumption in search of the one. Now what we can do is we can take some of those lucky numbers that were produced along the way, and we can use them to register onto the blockchain directly, that you were able to find a lucky number of an easier to calculate level. So basically we can we don't just have one lucky number. We have one lucky number for actually processing the block of transactions, but we have a bunch of lucky numbers that someone could get to register your work. Okay, so what we can do is basically modify the transaction type. So when you send coins around, you're executing a transaction on the network. When you click send, it's propagating a transaction to the network, and a block is just a group of transactions. So I'm basically designing now a special transaction strictly for mining, and all it contains is the hash, the lucky number that you got that wasn't good enough to get the block, but it was good enough to register the fact that you have put in some amount of work and exactly how much work you've put in. And you can also, you also need to associate an address with that hash. So basically you click mine, and this will all work in the back end. To the user, they're going to click mine and they're going to get rewards often without a pool. On the back end, what's happening is some of your hashes that are otherwise wasted are being recorded as work that was completed. It's being put into the next block as a special transaction with your address and the hash, the lucky number that you found. Now, when a miner gets the correct hash to process the block of transactions, they will also process the hashes from the miners that have been getting these special transaction hashes. And you could say they're like mini blocks. They're not really blocks though. They're literally just mining shares. I think that's really the best way to think about it. We're gonna register mining shares in between blocks and include them in blocks like transactions. So when the person who actually gets the block, like the normal way, completely unchanged, they're going to confirm that all the hashes, the mining share hashes, are correct. They meet the protocol requirement, and they have a certain degree of difficulty to them. And basically, from the difficulty that can be known via the hash, they can then calculate a proportional reward payout, all in the back end. The person who processes the block will calculate a proportional reward payout to each address according to the hashes that they have registered into the block. So basically, long story short is, that's the technical details. Long story short is, we're gonna keep track of how much mining you're doing in the blockchain, so that you can get a fraction of a block reward often. Okay, it's basically that simple. Now, when you get into the numbers, our blockchain can actually, in terms of capacity data on the blockchain, our blockchain could actually process, in terms of the 2 megabyte capacity per block, 30,000 shares per block. Now that's not our limitation. That means that, in theory, if we could process all those shares in a timely manner, we could do 10 million payouts per day. Okay. Now that's the upper limit right now in terms of capacity. In terms of processing the actual hashes, meaning the miner, the only one that actually has to check the mined transactions. The nodes on the network don't have to check the mined transactions from previous blocks. Only the miner needs to check them, and then all previous blocks have been checked by the miner. But when the miner gets the real block, they need to go through this list of mining share lucky numbers, and they need to confirm that they're legit, and then they need to proportionally pay out the rewards based on it. There's more of a limitation in that sense, and for that we want to be less than 1,000 shares per block. And I'm going to start our test net off when we test this system out before we decide to bring it over to the main network if the community is on board, etc. But in the test network, I'm going to start it out at 100 shares per block. So for every block, we can record 100 miners' work. Now on Verium, the blocks come in every 4 minutes. And one of the distinctions, as Kevin mentioned, between Verium besides CPU mining is that we have a variable block time. So this is an auto scaling mechanism. There's a lot of hoo-ha about scaling. It is a real problem. There is a problem with transferring data over a global network in an efficient manner that doesn't bias consensus towards certain parts of the network. So this is something to consider. We don't really have this problem in terms of these mining shares because they're only going to take about 64 bytes. And so we could actually do the 10 million payouts per day if we wanted to in terms of latency on the network, but we're going to keep it small to start off, mostly so that when the miners are mining and they're checking to make sure the hashes are correct, they're not spending too much time doing that. I don't want to, because that will, if it took too long for the miner to process the transactions, then that could make it harder for a small miner to get their fair share. But if we keep this number small, then it's negligible. It's under a second or two to do this processing. Now, here's one of the distinctions between this system, which will be all on-chain, and P2 Pool, which is basically a way of doing this in a decentralized way. It's the same concept, but it's on a separate blockchain, and it's written in Python. We actually implemented P2 Pool for Verium, and Verium is CPU-intensive mining. Python sucks at CPU-intensive things, so it was really inefficient. But there's an actual problem here, fundamental. Even if we ported P2 Pool to the fastest processing language possible, the people who are using P2 Pool basically have to do more work. They have to process all these shares, right? Mm-hmm. And then the people who are not using P2 Pool don't have to waste any cycles on that. So anyone who's on a P2 Pool basically has a disadvantage, even though the payouts are being done proportionally on a decentralized network like P2 Pool. They're paying a penalty in their efficiency. Basically, they're getting less coins to be on a decentralized network. And what happens? Everyone moves over to the centralized pools, and P2 Pool ceases to be a significant factor in any proof of work currency. So by implementing this directly on the chain, the downside is we're forcing everyone to take proportional payouts. We're not changing the block production. We're not changing the consensus. We're changing the payout system to be proportional. So that's the downside. Everyone has to be a participant in the proportional payout system. The upside is there is no disadvantage for having decentralized mining shares on the chain. Everyone's doing it. Everyone, and I'm basically, I'm going to keep the system is going to be targeted to keep the mining shares at a lower processing level so that it's not a factor really in terms of efficiency. Now, so if we do 100 of these mining shares per block, we can do 36,000 solo mining payouts per day, okay? So we could start off there. Now Verium has a variable block time. This is an auto scaling mechanism. So as more miners come on, the blockchain moves faster. And this means that per unit time, 100 mining shares per block there'll be more per unit time. So if there's 100 mining shares per 4 minutes, more miners come on, we go down to 3 minutes. Now we get 100 mining shares every 3 minutes. So this system would basically just inherently auto scale with the variable block time in Verium. So at 100, right now, if we have 100 mining shares per block and a 4-minute block time, we have 36,000 solo mining payouts per day. Now this is interesting. If you take all the Bitcoin nodes and all of the, and the total data for this is about, in each block is about 6 kilobytes. We have a maximum data size per block of 2 megabytes. So it's essentially, it's nothing. It's like it's equivalent to like 10 transactions or less. It's completely safe territory in terms of the amount of data per block. So, but 36,000 solo mining payouts per day is pretty good. So we can do, that doesn't mean that there's only 36,000 people total could get a payout per day, because we're also going to average the mining shares over some number of blocks, so the proportionality can be split up even more. But this is a cool number. So 36,000 payouts per day. This is the potential solo mining payouts. These are people directly connected to the Verium network. If you take all the nodes in the Bitcoin network and all the nodes in the Ethereum network and add it up, the estimated number, you are just shy of 30,000 nodes. Okay, so our system right off the bat, with basically having no impact on the consensus, having no impact on data on the chain and all that, having a decentralized proportional payout scheme that's secure and scalable immediately up to more payouts per day than there are nodes on Ethereum and Bitcoin combined, means that on the low end, we could be this is like the most conservative. On the low end, we could be the biggest network if people actually solo mined at this level because of these advantages. So now we were talking about increasing the consensus. If we actually did 36,000 solo mining payouts a day, and those were individuals, let's say individual solo mining nodes, we would have a hyper-connected network that's bigger than any cryptocurrency network, and that would improve scaling exponentially, because data that does transfer on the network is going to move fastest through the fastest route. So if you're connected to 5 nodes and one node has a better connection and they're directly connected to you, you're not going to get the block from the guy who's slow in between you and the fast node. The fast network node. You're going to get the block first from the guy who's fast. So if you have a hyper-connected network that's bigger than the rest of the 2 top networks combined, then we're going to have majorly decreased latency, because you're going to get the data from the fastest node, and the more nodes you're connected to and exists on the network you could connect to, the more likely you're to get the data at a faster pace, which means that essentially by enhancing the number of solo miners, we not only decrease centralization, which is really the most important thing, is security, but we're also going to greatly increase scaling capacity in terms of internet latency. And the other, so I'm going to now end my long-winded technical spiel with a final concept here. And that is basically, in the end, when we connect the 2 chains together, we're going to have all the growth from Verium and security enhancement and all these benefits that I've been talking about in terms of the mining security come into VeriCoin in terms of processing VeriCoin blocks at a quicker and quicker rate proportional to Verium's mining usage. So this means we basically get the gold store of value security in the fast and inexpensive payment system, with a very advanced, with real potential for a very advanced solo mining, hyper-connected, very large network. And at the same time, you get, when you're mining right now, like I said, you get 1 lucky number, gives you the block. In this system, there would be 3 types of ways to use your hashes. You can record multiple. You can record multiple mining shares. You can potentially get a block on the VeriCoin network with some of your shares that are otherwise wasted, and then you can also potentially get a block on the Verium network. So basically, we're getting people will get their fair share of mining more than any other system that currently exists, and the scaling numbers are good. The processing numbers are good. Yeah. So this is
at that point, as more and more people, because this is always the question. I know last week people were asking that, Verium needs to be on more exchanges. And my take on it is there's multiple ways. There should be more than one way to acquire crypto, not just an exchange. The best way is to participate in the system.
Yeah.
So if you have more people now getting access to Verium, and then we can work on something where it's easy to exchange the Verium for VeriCoin if you so choose, because VeriCoin also pays the interest. Now we've got a really good economy, and it's strong because you have the commodity, which is in some levels, everyone has equal access to earn it. But then you have the currency, which is fast, extremely low cost, and again, I'm a big fan of VeriCoin because I like the fact that it's paying the interest. And
Mm-hmm.
but at that point, you've got more people in the system.
Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of being able to allow people to exchange between Verium and Vericoin.
Yeah, and this actually makes me think of a really important point that we've talked about before, and Kevin, you've mentioned before, and that is after creating, designing, building, and working on cryptocurrencies, Vericoin and Verium for over 4 years, I have realized something, and that is in terms of how things should be done, and that is there's the chicken and egg problem. How do you get on an exchange? How do you get, you basically, you don't get users unless you're liquid, unless you're on an exchange, unless, there's a market. But you won't get on an exchange if you don't have users, et cetera. I've decided it's not a chicken and egg problem. It's the chicken, it's not the egg. The egg is the people, the community that have done work to design these protocols and these technologies. The chicken is the actual users and the community and the broader market, basically. So what we want more than anything is we don't want to be on some exchange for the sake of being on some exchange. We want users to demand currency that's more and demand it because it's more accessible and more usable. And then they ultimately will become the phenomenon that results in everything else that everyone wants, which is, being on exchanges, having good volume, having merchant acceptance, all these other things. You need the people. The people have to come. And this also brings us back to the community that, if I or any of the other developers, the volunteer developers, everyone, I happen to be here at the beginning, but if someone has a better idea than me, then I would prefer that be implemented. And if they know how to implement it better, I would prefer that they implement it. And basically, if we can all participate more in this process directly, then there's going to be more chickens, and then
Right.
they'll be laying eggs.
Correct. Right. Yeah, I understand the analogy, I think. With that being said, I think one of the, this is my second week now doing the last time I did the live stream and now the hangout with you. And I mentioned last week, this is not my comfort zone being on camera. I don't mind doing this, and if the community wants this to keep going on, I'll do them as it's relevant. I don't want to do one just for the sake of doing one. But I mean, if there's things to talk about or the community wants to talk about things, then I'm all for it. So with that being said, anybody in the community that wants to participate in these types of hangouts, if you've contributed, whether in the sense of marketing or development, or you have ideas you want to share, I'd love to open up this forum to have other people come in.
Yeah.
And because I've been trying to get rid of this perception that there's this team of people that are basically responsible for making this project a success.
Yeah.
And the team is the community. And the broader we grow that out, with different opinions and different characteristics. Like, I've got my views on exchanges, and I'm not really a fan. I'm more focused on use cases, but that doesn't mean that my intentions and my motivations are the only right thing. Everyone has their own perspective on it, and we need as many perspectives as possible.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna, anyone that wants to get involved in these types of conversations, I think the more people we have, the better.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of funny because you can't have, I mean, very simply, you can't have a decentralized currency run by a team or a company,
Right.
Because then guess what? I mean, it's not decentralized.
Correct. Exactly.
It's very simple. So it does require people to think counterintuitively compared to since the dawn of human civilization. But technology does offer us this opportunity to democratize, is one way of saying it, democratize finance. And it's not just finance or the market or the economy. People buy food with money. That's how this world works. And if there's a small team that has more authority and control over money, then it's not a good money. And that's right. Basically the essential point of cryptocurrency is trying to make a better money. And so community participation is not just something that's going to be beneficial. It's absolutely essential. And the first Hangout, direct, like, not, and I don't mean community participation. I mean the community is everything. And in the first Hangout we decided to do a Hangout so people knew we weren't scammers. There's always a lot of scams in an unregulated space. So we were like, let's just do a Hangout. We're literally trying to improve the systems. Let's explain that to people. They can see our faces. We don't need to be anonymous, blah, 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 blah. At the time, it was a novel concept largely. And so we did a Hangout, but we literally invited anyone to join the Google Hangout on our first Hangout and subsequent, etc. And literally it was a Hangout. It was intended to be a Hangout. It turned out that most people, I was just telling Kevin this earlier, most people were like, they're like, oh, okay, they clicked the link, they connected, and then they realized they were on like the live Google Hangout, and they're like, oh crap, and they got off. I mean, even there you can see where people are like, thinking more in terms of hierarchy, but even in the first Hangout, we were literally trying to do a Hangout with the community, and it ended up that it was really just us that stayed on because people didn't feel comfortable, didn't feel like it was appropriate. But this has been what we've been trying to do since the beginning. And I think bringing in people who are interested and bringing in people who are working on the mobile wallet, people who are working on the Bitcoin core update, people who are working on all the other things related to use cases, payments, and I mean, there's probably hundreds of unspoken things that occur in the background, right. Contacting exchanges when we need to, talking to community members about what's going on, tech support, explaining the technology to people. And there's a lot of community members that really already do all this stuff, and it's really amazing. And I'll highlight one in particular. VeriMad has really done so much stuff. And there is a lot of work to be done. If we have more people doing all this stuff, it would just be great. This has been the philosophy from the beginning.
I don't think people realize how much effort and work VeriMad puts in. It's baffling to me how much he's been able to do. And it's an unsung, I think it's an unsung position to be like community manager.
Yeah, it is.
And then again, I know I talk with him quite often, and I know he does much more than people can even begin to realize.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's very difficult for a lot of people that came into crypto later to realize it's more of a movement and the decentralization aspect. I know we had a call with somebody one time, and or even just in general, even like anybody in anything lately, it's like an application or whatever. The questions are always like, okay, well, what's the address of your blockchain company or your cryptocurrency company. Like, it's
Yeah.
not a company. We do not have an address.
There
Who's
is
the
no.
CEO? There is no CEO. And you try to explain this to people and they just don't get it. They're like, well,
Yeah.
you've got to be doing, like, you're not doing this for free. I'm like, actually, yeah, kind of. Like, it's the same as
Yeah.
Bitcoin. And that's the thing.
Right.
I ask people, well, who's Bitcoin's CEO? Where's Bitcoin's corporate office?
Mm-hmm.
And I see questions on like Quora. I saw one the other day. How do these cryptocurrency companies maintain a profit? How do they make money? And I saw one today. Is it possible that Bitcoin will go bankrupt?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I think there's still like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a new concept. There is a book that I read. Well, I didn't read it. I read the summary of it. And I'm curious if you've read it. It's called The Starfish, or The Spider and the Starfish.
No.
I'll send you I'll post the link in this. The guy did a Google talk. He spoke to Google Invites authors, and I was watching this. He was talking about the power of decentralization, and then he says something about I can't remember, but the timing of it was a little odd, because basically this was around 2007,
Mm-hmm.
and he said he was going to be working on a project.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't talk about it. And but either way, the concept of decentralization and how it works, he references military tactics too. So when we went to Afghanistan, and how we were having to basically, we had like U.S. military is very structured and organized and whatever, and then you're going against a decentralized opponent, and the challenges, and we were like the U.S. military was like, we don't know how to handle this.
Right.
Eventually, but either way, that there's historical references of the power of decentralization.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that's just kind of paramount to our project, especially everything that we've talked about earlier today with Varium and one of the intentions. So the project it's open for anybody really to get involved with. And I think the core, and maybe that's one thing, like I hate to use the word marketing. I really do, because you've made a comment in the past. No one should be using a currency because it's marketed better. They should be using the currency because it's actually solving a problem. It's more efficient. It's, everything that what we're trying to do. That's the purpose. That's the reason. So marketing comes from the standpoint of making sure people understand it.
Mm-hmm.
They understand the principles of it.
Mm-hmm.
They're not buying it because, oh, it's going to moon. They're buying it because they understand the value of it.
Mm-hmm. And that
But
actually, like you were just saying, because this is different, because it is sort of like a technological social movement as well as a system. There's a lot of education that's needed. So I think that's also, that's what one of the things Kevin has been really working on and doing really well, is trying to figure out how to explain these new technologies and these new ways of interacting with people via the technology in a way that people can understand and they can see the benefit of, and then they can come to the conclusion themselves that this is going to benefit me. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, but I guess where I was going to say, when I kind of got sidetracked with the marketing side, and maybe one of the things that I feel and I say we, meaning the community, can maybe try to do better, is I think there needs to be that idea of a core belief.
Mm-hmm.
So what this project is like the core principle belief that it's based on. which for me, it comes to really a few words. Fairness is one. I think if we can implement this, I like to try to think about envisioning what the world looks like if we pull this off and it works.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what motivates me. That's what gets me excited. And the core of that is there's freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom's a main word, which is what I live for. That's the number one. Freedom is the one thing I value more than anything. But then again, fairness. And again, the community, it's not for me to say but I think those types of things are what will instill people to want to get involved. Thinking about, I mean, the technology is great, but the technology has to have, at the end of the day, a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, there's people that are going to be involved in this because they want to buy low and sell high. And I get that. And I've got nothing against those people either.
Mm-hmm.
But what's going to ultimately make this, I guess, I don't know if the word last or survive is the right word, but what's going to make it a reality is people that believe in they have the passion for that difference of what the world can look like.
Yep.
And I think everything that you're doing and the way you've thought things through, with decentralization being if you look at the project, that's the core in my mind. It's what makes this unique.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've got a good thing. We just need to get more people in the community to get engaged. And I think we've done, I said it, I think I said it last week. If I didn't, I'll say it again real fast. The community size right now is probably smaller than it was in November of 2017, size-wise.
Mm-hmm.
But the number of people actually making contributions to the project now, I feel, is greter than last year.
It's
so
the best.
Even though we have a smaller number, I think
the best it's ever been.
We've got a stronger community than we did a year ago.
Yeah.
And hopefully that just continues to improve. And but yeah, I think so we can wrap this up soon. But I would definitely like to try to get more more input and more of these types of hangouts with more people involved in the future. So I don't have to be the one hosting it either. Really, there's a number of people that would probably do a better job than me that I can think of off the top of my head. But I'd like to have it where, we can talk to get different opinions and different feedback from different people that have, that are contributing in different ways. So.
No, that would be cool. In the past, we had done Hangouts and we had community members on, and it was always good. And it basically is just a way for people to see that they can contribute and what other people are contributing. And there's more things to do than just development. You don't have to be a coder to participate. Obviously, coders are welcome, but there's so many different things that can be done.
Sure. I mean, like Charlie, who's trying to get, he's got some retail locations essentially, and he's working on getting VeriCoin accepted. And then there's some other things beyond that he's helping with as well. There are a couple questions. I don't know if you have time for me to go through these really quick.
No,
one's a good question that it's never really been brought up, and I think it's probably worth just getting it out there. Someone asked what happened with Patrick, the other co-founder. What's his involvement, if any? And so maybe you can. I don't want to speak on his behalf, but maybe you can kind of.
Yeah, and I mean, Patrick. So if you're just coming in more recently, Patrick was really transparent about everything. I still talk to him about the everything that we're working on. I see him now and again. He's in the chat sometimes. He's basically doing zero work for the project right now. He was transparent about it. He started a job that basically needs all of his hours after he got his PhD. and he's in. It turns out he's in the finance field now, but it basically just doesn't have time for anything else but his full-time position. And he was real open about that right from the start. So he's stepped back in terms of contributing, but he's still sort of like a consultant, you could say.
That's what I was going to say. He
consultant, yeah.
I think he does, like, he still advises on some things that maybe you're working on. And I know you get you get ideas and you run them by him, and he can kind of validate if it's worth pursuing. And I know other things that that I've had questions regarding, he's acted as an advisor as well. So he's definitely still has an interest in the project. He wants to see it successful. He's just not able to put it in day to day or even, any much time at all, like you mentioned. Someone asked if there is, regarding the mining shares, and I think you touched on this, but is the storage space a concern with mining shares? I think you tackled that and said it's
it's small. Yeah, it's basically, I mean, it's 6 kilobytes of 2 megabyte block size. It's like nothing.
Okay. And then it kind of related, can it automatically delete older data, or does it need to be linked to root in the Merkle tree?
So basically the way that we're making this proportional payout system secure is by effectively etching it into the blockchain. So basically anything that's been approved in a previous block is as permanent as a regular transaction would be. So so it uses the same mechanism of permanence that Bitcoin does for transactions. So once it's a passed block, it's not changing.
Okay. And then question was, when we get this, if it is successful on the testnet and it's launched, can it be mined in a browser?
Yeah, it could be. So if, I mean, someone could make Monero has done something like this. There's like I mean, Monero can be mined with a GPU or a CPU. GPU is better, so it's not really practical to be mined in a browser for Monero. But they have an implementation, I think, basically a Java script miner, effectively. And the real question is it practical? Our algorithm and our proportional payout mining share system would make web page, like JavaScript mining, more practical. So it's certainly a possibility, yeah.
Okay. And then the last one, any updates on the Verium mobile mining? I think I touched on this last week. That's contingent primarily, more than anything right now, on getting our getting us updated to the most recent version of the Bitcoin Core.
Yeah, so basically, one of the again, it comes down to practicality. One of the challenges with mobile mining is the ARM processor is the most efficient, but it's also not super powerful. So if you're mining on a smartphone, you're gonna mine efficiently to the point where you're not gonna notice a dent in your electric bill, from charging it up, blah, blah, blah. We're gonna have conditions in the app for all that. But if you have to continuously mine for 20 days to get a block, then yeah, you can technically mine with a smartphone, but it's not practical. So the mobile mining wallet, in terms of execution, we're doing it on the Bitcoin Core update, like basically the blockchain database update that we're doing. But in terms of practicality of mining, you absolutely need something extremely effective like the mining shares for it to be practical. Though our algorithm is suitable. So it's not just the algorithm, you also need the payout mechanism to be practical for this.
Okay, I'm laughing because someone wrote, just don't mine it on a Samsung Note 7.
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up. I mean, like I said, this is good to do every once in a while. And I apologize. Last week I'd been kind of MIA for a while as far as video presence and things like that. I've been in the community chatting and whatever, but these video updates are probably good to do more frequently.
Yeah, we should
And
do them more frequently. It's an easy way
okay.
for people to stay in touch with the project.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and end it unless you got anything else you want to say before we go, or
No, I think we're good.
okay. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll look for your feedback. If you like these and you want us to do more of them, please leave a comment in the video.
And volunteer to come on too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
great.
if you want to be involved in this, definitely shoot me a message or Doug a message or Verimat a message. On Skype, I'm at Blue Links MKTG. Doug is at Effects to Cause. We're on the Slack channel pretty much every day. And you can also email me, kalvarez@vericoin.info. So, all right. We'll everyone have a good weekend and look forward to the feedback.
See ya.